for me. I understand that one thing that you would like to change in your life is to go to bed earlier. Why is that so important to you?
Well, I'd really like to be able to get up earlier to kind of give myself some time to get quiet before work, maybe even exercise a little bit.
So what keeps you from doing that?
I feel like it's like my brain is alive at night. I'm more alert to be able to read, so I do a lot of homework, even watch TV at night, so it kind of keeps me wired.
So maybe you need to start doing that stuff earlier and winding down earlier so that you can go to bed earlier.
Okay, that might be helpful.
So that's an example of a more directing style of counseling where the counselor is telling you what you need to do. Okay, so
motivational interviewing is a strategy where you allow the client to find their own direction through a series of strategies, techniques.
Motivational interviewing is a dance. Let him take the lead as much as possible.
It's not the stick of authority that gets someone to change. It really has to be an internal process. You have to create the conditions where the client can solve the problem in a way that they can connect to and make their own.
okay, so in this class, the learning outcomes that I like to see are to compare and contrast the two forms of reflections, simple reflections and complex reflections in reflective listening, and to create and role play appropriate reflections, both simple and complex, as responses to possible client statements. Motivational interviewing, or MI, is a person-centered counseling style for addressing the common problem of ambivalence. The 4 core skills of MI are open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summarizing. For this lesson, we will be focusing on reflective listening. There are 2 types of reflections used in reflective listening: simple reflections and complex reflections. Simple reflections repeat or slightly rephrase the content that is spoken. I'm feeling pretty depressed today. You're feeling depressed. A complex reflection makes a guess at the unspoken content of what the client may say next. I'm feeling pretty depressed today. Something has happened since we last talked. Some important things to remember about reflective listening are: reflections are not questions. A reflection should be shorter than the statement it follows. Reflections are meant to encourage personal exploration, and too many simple reflections may cause the conversation to go in circles. Reflective listening is a learnable skill and one of the most important skills in motivational interviewing. MI as a counseling style helps people to move forward to naturally resolve ambivalence. The traditional directing style of counseling can be compared to giving a person a fish to feed them for a day. However, motivational interviewing would be the equivalent of teaching them how to fish to feed them for a lifetime. Okay, so the main ideas that I want to get across in this class are reflective listening,
Thank you.
And then how to use simple reflections. And then complex reflections. And how all of these fit into motivational interviewing. Okay, so from the video, let's see. We got that reflective listening is one of the 4 core skills of motivational interviewing and one of the most important skills in motivational interviewing. And reflective listening includes simple reflections and complex reflections. So right now I'm going to hand out this, it's called a Venn diagram, which is, hold on, it's in here. Here it is. Okay. Has anybody ever done a Venn diagram? Yeah, so you know what they are. So I want you to do this on your own. And basically what this is comparing and contrasting. So you've got 2 types of reflections and reflective listening. You have the simple and the complex. And it's all within the realm of reflections or reflective listening. So over here in this circle, you're going to put some characteristics about a simple reflection. And then you're going to put characteristics about a complex reflection, and then what do they both have in common in the middle section. So, are there any questions about that?
Just the simple reflections are basically, from the video, it says they're rephrasing what the client, you're basically rephrasing what the client is telling you. What was it that the complex is telling you or asking you in response to the client?
So with a complex reflection, you're going to kind of make a guess at continuing the person's statement, the client's statement.
Okay.
So if he said, I'm feeling a little depressed today, you might say, in the video it said, well, something has happened since we last met.
Okay.
Well, that might be something that he might say after he says, I'm feeling a little depressed today because something happened after we last met.
Okay.
And it might not be, but either way, it's going to continue the conversation.
You're basically prompting the client to explain what's going on.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. So, let's see. This is repeating. I can put this thing in there. And this is taking a guess. What do they both have in common?
Rephrasing. This one I need to still check. On pH.
You could put that, or one thing they both have in common is listening this way. So you it doesn't even have to put a line in there, you can put one word on each side. It's okay.
Is that not legible?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how to word it.
This would be like guessing. Or continuing the conversation.
This is like, complex is more like you're trying to lead the client into like a deeper conversation.
Yes, yeah. This one you can put rephrasing. With the simple reflections, you're basically repeating back to them exactly what they said. to you, but you could change the wording a little bit.
So the simple reflection is like the base definition of what reflective listening is. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know
Yeah.
how like you listen to somebody and then the simple reflection is basically just repeating what that person said to acknowledge
Right.
what they said?
Right, which is more along the lines of active listening. Have you ever heard of active listening?
Yeah, active listening. That's
Right, but with reflective listening, it's a little bit different as far as like the complex part.
Okay.
It's gonna try to lead them into, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to pull out of them what's going on.
Right.
And the answers to how to change it. But this is just, you gotta remember that this is just a piece. This is one of the skills of motivational interviewing. There's other skills.
Right.
So,
In complex reflections, can there be a question?
no. There are other skills where you would use questions in motivational interviewing, but this is not. And those reflections, really, when you come to the end of the reflection, you want to drop your voice so it's obvious that it's not a question. Because
Okay.
questions will go up, but statements, your voice kind of drops.
So that's something they have in common. They're not a question ever.
Right, they're not a question.
It's just a way to expand the conversation to get the client to look at something a little bit different.
Right, yeah. And when everybody's ready, just let me know. Okay, so now, what I want you to do is pair up. So Beth and Maeve, and Lindsay and Jackie, I want you to pair up and compare your answers with each other, and then come up with a question to ask the other group.
So they can do a reflective listening, a complex listening.
No, not yet. Just come up with a question about reflective listening to ask them.
Just,
So they can answer, so I know that they know.
Reflect into
Right.
school.
Okay.
Guessing.
Okay. I've got really simple is rephrasing.
Okay, so this group is asking you guys this question. What should you do with your voice to make sure the client knows that it's not a question?
As you're talking to the client and you want them to respond, you slowly bring down your voice to allow them to interject at that point.
Okay,
Make it like you're stating something instead of asking them something, and then see what comes from that out of them, like what they'll say in response to it.
okay. Why do you think you would not want to ask a question?
Because then you're leading.
It feels like you're cornering them too,
Right,
because they don't feel like they have a say-so in the conversation. You're doing all the,
right.
and they feel very cornered and
Right, and then they would have to just answer that question instead of saying, no, that's not how I feel.
Right.
This is how I feel.
Right.
So, where's your question? Okay.
ignore all spelling grammar. I didn't have that spell check for me.
And,
Yeah, it's automatic. That just shows it.
I think that's kind of where you were leading with what you wanted. I hope so.
yeah, I mean, just anything about
Okay.
thoughts. Okay, so can a client go deeper with thoughts when using simple or complex reflections from the counselor, and how?
I would think that a client could go deeper with the complex reflections, just because the counselor has kind of put some forward movement to it, so I can say, if I were the client, I could either say that was right or wrong, and I could go into more detail.
Right, so, a simple reflection is basically just, repeating back to the person what they said, to let them hear what their thoughts are. And when we hear what our thoughts are, sometimes it changes them for us. But like the video said, if you use too many simple reflections, you'll end up just going in circles with it. Whereas a complex reflection is going to go deeper for the person. And it's really meant to, this whole process is really meant to kind of evoke within the person what they need in order to solve their own problems, really. And that's what's meant by, if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. It's how do I get to those places in me where I have the answers to my own problems. So,
Cool.
So I'm gonna give you these possible statements, client statements. And so if you would go ahead and you can go ahead and write on there even what you might say. But what I want you to do first is I want one person to be the client and one person to be the counselor. And then whoever's the client is going to read one of those statements. But you can't pick the same statement. And so go ahead and just kind of look at it right now and write down some things, and then we're going to do it. Each person is going to do it separately, so we can kind of evaluate how you do.
You can also put
I'll leave it behind.
some understanding.
I was in a bad mood yesterday
What you're
because
saying
work
is
has been so
another
stressful. I just can't keep up with everything I do.
You know, you're trying to get them in the complex
pretty stressed out
to
yesterday at work.
look for a solution. See something a little bit deeper than, you know, just.
So let me just add a little bit. So what you're going to do first is you're going to read this, the client will read this statement, and you're going to the counselor will form a simple reflection in response to that statement. And then the client will respond to the simple reflection, and then the counselor will form a complex reflection in response to that.
So after I say this,
Wait,
they'll
say it again?
respond to what I just
So
said.
we don't have to use all four.
Sometimes.
No, just use one. One each.
Okay.
Yeah, just use one each.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't pick the same one. Like Beth will pick one and you'll pick one.
Starting was the test
Okay.
time to use for the.
That would be simple.
That just helps.
So what I'm doing is saying is that
Okay.
you get really anxious.
So she's already made a statement to my simple reflection. Now
So
she
you're
needs
kind of
to
repeating what they're saying,
make
but
a
you're
statement.
stating it.
Okay,
and I'll make it
so
complex.
who's the
And then
client?
the complex would be.
She uses number 2 as the client.
Okay, so what she's gonna do is she's gonna read that to you, and you'll form a simple reflection back to her.
Okay.
Then she needs to say something in
So
response to
testing
that
can be
simple
very
reflection.
difficult for you.
And then she needs to
Have
make
you
it
ever
complex.
used any
Then you need to
techniques?
make a complex reflection.
Have you
Does that
ever
make
thought
sense?
about different ways that you can
Alright, so let's start
reduce
over.
anxiety?
You read your statement.
I feel like I'm doing all of the work around the house. I really need someone to help.
So you feel
And
like
then I
you're the
would
only
respond
one
to
that
something
works
like, well, you
in the
know, when I
house.
get anxious with the
Yeah.
kids when they drive me
I am
crazy,
not the only one.
is sometimes I have to walk away and breathe. I can't walk away at test time, but I can breathe through it.
You feel like
So that would be expanding on.
the other people
that
living in
visual
your
process.
house don't really pull their weight.
Okay, so when you
So I
do
just
it,
sounded like a
yeah, you
question.
just told her how she feels, right? So some of the things you might start out with is, what I hear you saying
Techniques
is
to reduce your anxiety
that,
that are similar to those that
what
you
was the
use
statement again?
with your family.
I feel like
How's that?
Yeah.
And I
I'm
can
doing all the
expand
work
on that.
around the house. I really need someone to help.
So you're
And you
getting
want to
really
read it
tired
on
and
Have you
there's
ever
nobody
considered-
there to help you with the work.
Yeah.
I know, so.
Is that as simple?
Yeah, that's kind of bordering on simple, but just what would she say next? You
That would
have
be
plenty
very
of people, you could
focused on
say
that.
something like, there's plenty of people that could do the work, but you're the one doing all of it.
Can I?
When you reply to
Okay.
simple, it's short and
So
sweet.
can I use this
When
as
you
the
reply
first
simple.
statement?
Okay, when you
Yeah.
reply
And
to
then in
complex, it's longer.
response to her simple, whatever reflection, can I say, I really need someone to help, and then she.
So this would be a
Yeah,
chocolate
you can
cake
do that.
with chocolate icing. This would be a chocolate cake with chocolate icing and writing on it.
So how would that-
Designs.
Sorry, no, it's not your fault.
I'm trying to pull
Okay, just start one more time.
whatever
Yeah,
I'm
so
saying.
like,
In
I'm
comments.
all
Having a hard time
around.
trying
Well,
to
you're
figure
not
out what
pulling
to
it out of
say.
me, you're trying to get me to come up with solutions.
Right. What I hear you
And not
saying is
me.
that
Yeah.
Telling you what to do.
there are a lot of people in the house that could help, but you're the only one doing anything.
Yeah, I could really use someone to help.
It's awkward when a whole bunch of people are watching. As far as a complex one, I kind of sense that maybe you're a little tired and that some help around the house would really help you to kind of
So what I hear you
not feel
saying
overwhelmed.
is,
What I hear you saying is that some help around the house would maybe help you to not feel so overwhelmed with all that needs to be done.
that's good, that's a really
Yeah.
good one. Okay. So you guys want
So
I'll start? Oh, do you have your other?
Oh, we're not
the other
done.
one?
No, we hadn't.
Go ahead.
We got stumped.
Good.
Okay,
So you got that one though? You're done with that one?
yeah.
Yes. Do you want us to work on this on our other one, or you want them to go?
Are you
Or
guys
we
done
want-
both ways? Okay. No, go ahead and get yours.
Okay. Okay. I was in a bad mood yesterday because work has been so stressful. I just can't keep up with everything I have to do.
What I hear you saying is you were feeling pretty stressed out at work yesterday.
Yeah, there's a lot to do, and I just feel like the load on, how much time I have and how much I have to do is not really matching up.
So what I hear you saying is that you're getting pretty overwhelmed at work.
I am. I feel like there's too much to do and not in just a really short amount of time to do it in. And I really wish, my superiors would see that.
How is that?
I don't really feel that way. That is not at all how I feel.
Okay. All right, so just keep, are you done with that?
That's our final.
Your simple?
Okay, that's your final.
That was
Okay.
simple and complex.
So if you had to evaluate what they just did, what would you say?
I gotta give them a grade?
Just evaluate their.
Oh, was I supposed to be
their
paying
reflection.
attention? No,
Okay.
yes. Well, I think they did a real good job on the simple. And the complex could have gone a little bit deeper with the counselor responding to the original question.
Yeah, the complex reflections are a little bit harder because you have to make a guess. You gotta kind of come up with something on the fly, and it takes a lot of practice. People actually spend years practicing these techniques, so you guys did pretty good.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You
Yeah,
did. You want us to go?
yeah.
Okay.
Who's first?
No, we didn't.
You be the client, and I'm gonna do a simple, and then we'll do a complex.
Okay. I was in a bad mood yesterday because work has been so stressful and I just can't keep up with everything that I have to do.
So what I hear you saying is sometimes you just feel so overwhelmed with day-to-day responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can get very difficult when you feel like you have everything to do all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can be very difficult,
Yeah.
just to get through that morning, to get to that first cup of coffee at that break.
Right.
Okay, okay. And that's our simple.
Okay.
And then our complex is, you want to read the question
Yep.
again?
I was in a bad mood yesterday because work has just been so stressful and I just can't keep up with everything that I have to do.
So what I think you're saying to me is that sometimes days seem harder and than others do. And do you have any suggestions in maybe reducing that stress level that you've used for other things and just not day-to-day work?
I mean, when it comes to just day-to-day work and just organizing it, I guess I can use more of like an organizing technique that I've used in other situations to try to make my day go by a little bit quicker and not as stressful.
So organizing has helped you before and you
Yes.
don't feel as stressed because you kind of have things written out for you.
Yeah,
That's
I have a
helped you lot.
plan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's really been beneficial for you. So maybe that's something you can use in your work, day-to-day work, and just make you an hourly planner. Do you think that might help you?
Yeah, I've never really thought about it going towards work.
Okay,
Okay.
good job.
So, what do you see?
Well, even though you asked a question, you asked 2 questions, there were still questions that helped Lindsay, the client, explore more of what she could do.
Right. So basically, you're going into actually some other skills of
That she's learned somewhere else that she can apply to this particular
Well, what
situation.
you were using was more, it fell under more of the evoking change and stuff like that. Because you're a counselor, you actually could have stopped at your first statement, and it was just a statement. And but then you started asking questions, which goes into a whole different skill.
Of motivational interviewing,
Right.
yeah.
So, but it was good.
She's professional.
So,
They weren't yes or no questions, that's what I noticed.
Yeah, and that's really important in,
Yeah.
in motivational interviewing is to, you don't want a yes or no question,
right.
a yes or no answer.
Right, yeah. So, so did you go the other way? Where you're the client and...
We're gonna do that
Yeah,
now.
we're gonna do that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm the client and you're the counselor now.
Yes.
I've been feeling anxious because I have a big test coming up and I have a difficult time taking tests.
What I hear you saying is that tests tend to be a very anxious situation for you.
You know, I get nervous before I even begin, just thinking about it. So that's simple.
That's, yeah, that's the simple.
Okay, complex?
Yes.
I've been feeling anxious because I have a big test coming up and I have a very difficult time taking tests.
So, your schooling situation is just a very anxious situation for you when it comes time for that test.
Yeah, I take a lot of classes.
Yeah. Have you ever used any methods to like reduce your anxiety in any kind of like a similar situation where you feel like the pressure's on?
Yeah, I use that, somebody taught me a breathing technique.
Okay.
And just to recenter myself, and I've used that when I get stressed at home with the kids.
Okay. Have you considered using that?
No, I haven't, but that would really be a good idea, to give it a shot, if it would reduce my anxiety. So,
Okay, so that, I mean, that's good. You're still going in, you're doing the same thing. You're going into other areas of motivational interviewing.
Say yes or no question.
But your statements and your answers, simple reflection and complex reflection. What do you think about those, you guys?
It was similar, using questions again. I thought the simple was really good.
Yeah.
It's really hard
Yeah.
to do a complex reflection without asking a question
It
to lead
is.
the client.
If you think about it as, okay, when you're listening to someone talk,
good job.
do you sometimes have what you think they're gonna say next in your head?
Yeah.
Okay, that's basically what it is,
Okay.
right? And they can either say, and it's okay if it's not right. You don't have to get it right, because then that continues the conversation. It's like, either they're gonna say, yeah, that's how I feel, or they're gonna say, no, that's not it, and then they're gonna tell you how they feel,
Right.
right? So, that's really what it is. And like I said, it takes years of practice for actually this whole, I mean, there's so much to motivational interviewing that it would take a semester of classes to even start to touch on it. And people, like I said, spend years on it. So it's really a way of counseling, but if you can learn it, it's really a really valuable tool in life.
Yeah.
You know, in just your daily relationships and stuff like that. So, okay, so what I want you to do now is to just develop some reflections. And when I say reflections, I'm not talking about reflective listening. I'm talking about reflect on the whole class. And just some thoughts about the class, all right? So reflect on the class and write them down. And then you're going to share those. And like what you've learned, what did you learn? Did you learn anything new from the class? And then what from this class might you take with you? Either if you're a counselor like these two, you might take it into the counseling setting. If for you guys, how might you use it in your life going forward?
I'm ready. I'm just finishing up.
Okay, who'd like to start?
I'll start us out. My understanding of this class up to this point is that it's important to allow the client to engage in the session by sharing his or her thoughts for solutions. So the more engaged they become, the more confident they become in being able to solve additional problems. That hearing their statements rephrased by someone else will give them insight as to how they may come across, you know, and that maybe it's something that they can work on.
Right,
So.
good. Okay. How might you take it with you in the future?
I think this is very important when it comes to counseling. And not just counseling, but when it comes to interacting with my family or my peers.
Right.
My coworkers, just the clerk in the grocery store,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so
Good.
it's something that you can apply throughout your whole
Right.
day-to-day walk.
That's good. Nancy?
I basically like the simple and complex. Those really stuck to me through the class because you can use those. I mean, for me personally in my daily lifestyle, you can use those towards your relationships with friends or a spouse or whatever. Simple reflections, basically letting the person know that you're really listening to them and that that's going to, I wrote down that, you know, listening is super important in relationships so that a conversation can grow. And if that person's going through something, then you can come to a solution and that relationship can then evolve just by listening.
Yes.
And then the complex reflections to conversations, you can evolve into a deeper relationship with that person by challenging them. And you could potentially just be helping a friend or a spouse in any kind of situation by just kind of leading them into their own solution.
Right.
And not suggesting what you've done.
Yeah, that's good. And when you think about it, if I want my husband to change, then I'm going to tell him how I want him to change, rather than listening to him and letting him figure out how maybe he needs to make some changes or do
Right.
something different.
Right.
Good.
I saw very similar to what Jackie and Lindsay are seeing, is just that the solution lies within the client or the other person. There was a better understanding for me just between the simple and complex. I didn't realize there was so much of a difference, and that the complex, basically I need practice and I want to practice it more. And then again, even, yes, definitely in sessions with people, I want to use this more. But again, in family, it's a biggie,
Yeah.
I think. I think that's going to be a big help just between my sister and my mom and extended family as well, the in-laws, to be able to learn more about them, because I like what you said, it creates relationship
Right.
more than
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, I've used it actually a lot with family, and it's almost feel like you found some magic power that they don't even know.
That's cool.
What about you, Beth?
So I have a friend who's going through some pretty serious stuff right now. And I feel like, I've gone through a lot of the same stuff that she's gone through. And the simple and complex reflections, I feel like would be more helpful for her than telling her what I've gone through and what I did when I was going through that. And letting her work her way through
Yes.
her problems with the simple and complex reflections. I feel like that'd be really
And
useful for her.
this whole method was designed really for addiction. And it was designed for people who are ambivalent about change. So it's sort of like, I want to change, but I don't want to change. I want to change, but this, right? So this is kind of used amongst other tools to get them to realize what the most important thing is that I don't want to be controlled by addiction anymore. So, anyway, all right. Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you.